Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It is Thursday, February 22nd, and we are here for our bracket rundown show. And wow, look at all these faces here. There's only one thing I could think.
Woohoo!
Here's the story of a lovely lady
God.
who was bring.
Okay, stop that. Stop that. Stop that
it.
now.
Yes, coming to you, Brady Bunch style. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. We got David Dorman and John Titel up front, up top here. David Griggs in the center square. Matt Zakowski and Joby Fortson to his side. Joby coming to you from New York City. What a view out that window right behind him. Uh, John Sleeka down the bottom row. We expect we might have one or two more jumping in here as the show goes on. So we got a heck of a show tonight.
That wouldn't be Alice and Mike Brady from the grave, would it?
It might be, for all I know. Though we've got a lot to get to here. Joby, I know you weren't with us Monday during the Hoops HD report, but over the past week and just over this weekend, we debuted our new DEF CON ratings, and I thought maybe we'd take a few seconds to explain them one more time and let you kind of explain them because I think you're able to explain them maybe a little better than I am. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the website here up on the screen share, and can you kind of go over people what these DEF CON ratings are?
Yeah, basically, it's when discussing with almost any fan base, it seems like around this time of year, they want to say, "Well, who should I be rooting for?" Even when when my team's playing, I know I need to root for my team to be better in seeding and a chance to get in the tournament. But I don't know about the other teams. I don't know what's going on in other games. Should I be rooting for Team X or Team Y? What we've done with the DEF CON ratings is try to put together a system that can run automatically once you input schedule and an underlying component seed list based on the JNG in this case, which is the most accurate computer generated seed list at predicting the NCAA tournament. And you can basically say, hey, this is who you should be rooting for. Some are obvious, and I'll use Virginia as an example here. You can see Florida Atlantic. You're going to root for SMU because Florida Atlantic's competing for Virginia seed. They're around the same seed line right now. Same Grand Canyon Tarleton. Tarleton was a Virginia opponent, and Grand Canyon is a few slots behind UVA for and at large. And so that gives you an idea. These sort of components that would go to determining, hey, is this a team I should be rooting against? Or in the case, I'll use the Tarleton game, a team I should be rooting for because they are an opponent, and thus the better they look, the better I look.
And the higher the DEF CON rating, so DEF CON 1 is the most important. It's generally going to be your own game.
Right.
2, 3, 4, all the way to 5 is, hey, it helps a little bit that Purdue beat Rutgers tonight for Virginia, but doesn't really move the needle much.
Right. It basically eliminates the threat of Rutgers coming from behind,
right.
Which it was an unlikely thing to happen anyway, but it's still on the board. Whereas had SMU, and they didn't, but had SMU beat Florida Atlantic, that's a big deal because Florida Atlantic probably moves below Virginia on the seed line. So it's all the way up to a 3. 2 is like, whoa, this is like your top win sort of thing. I would throw in a game like, a Florida-Kentucky win for Virginia. Virginia's top win out of conference, and they're playing Kentucky. Well, if Florida beats Kentucky yet again, driving Kentucky maybe not quite below Virginia, but at least, closer to Virginia, and Florida looks even better, making that win look even better for Virginia. So that's the examples we give. That would probably be DEF CON 2.
I'll throw one more thing out there. You could also look at a team's DEF CON ratings if you do not like the team. So if you really hated Virginia, just opposite the desired winner. Root for Florida Atlantic, root for Grand Canyon, root for Gonzaga, root for Northwestern. You can use it in reverse if you want to.
Popular click should be on Duke then.
All right, let's go here. And first of all, Rocco Miller joining us as well. So we've really got a full panel, almost the full Brady Bunch as we started the show with. But let's go ahead and get the regular screen share up here. And I figure do a few seconds here to start the show with a blind resume. We haven't done one yet all week. And I think I've got one here that's a little bit interesting, possibly. And with our normal question of who is better in the blind resume, the left or the right, I'll throw a few names. Titel, I know you love these. Let me start with you on this. What do you like here on these blind resumes, left or right or neither?
I do love them, but I'm so bad at them, Chad. So the OARs are neck and neck. J&G says I should lean left. Non-conference strength of schedule says I should evict the team on the left to the CBI or something.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go right, based mainly on non-conference strength of schedule. I understand there's no tier 1 on the right, and there's not a lot of tier 3 or tier 4 losses on the left. So I think Chad wants me to go left, but I'm going right.
Yeah, I want you to go left, but you're going right. Let me see here. Get a few other opinions here. Dorman, how about you?
I'm with Titel. I'm going right. I think this is Chad playing tricks with us. I'm going right. I agree.
One more opinion. Rocco,
Woo-hoo.
you like that opinion of going right?
I really don't like the non-conference rate, the schedule of 331 on the left. Obviously, the 3 high-end wins are nice, but yeah, I think that's a pretty big separator. I'm a big believer in the non-blind resume, looking at the actual teams, because when you actually watch teams play, you know how good they are. But anyway,
It's not how the Royal Committee does it, though. This is how they do it. They look at.
They just look at blind resumes.
Yeah.
So I would just say, assuming these are 2 bubble teams, I would kick the 331 team out to the NIT.
Slika, do you know who the teams are?
I'm guessing Ole Miss. Ole Miss is on the left.
That is dead right here. Actually, Ole Miss is on the left, which is a team none of you liked, and I knew that you would think I was trying to make you go left, and I actually wanted you all to go right. So you all kind of fell into my trap again, because the team on the left, Ole Miss, a team that we may or may not be in our field today as we reveal it. Team on the right did not get a single vote by anybody to be in their top 55 at all. The SMU Mustangs had to get to play tonight.
You have
I'll
to
admit they lost tonight,
left, Chad, because you got to beat somebody. They've beaten nobody.
Hey, they've got more tier 4 wins than Purdue.
And they have a bad loss. Whereas the team Ole Miss doesn't. Now, Ole Miss is garbage. They're both out.
SMU has a road ACC win, which is almost as good as a road Mountain West win, but not quite.
Oh, shots fired. Oh, wow.
You're going to see it, Joby. I'm just playing with you.
Hey, they have a road Big 12 win over West Virginia. So take that.
That's right. No, actually, that's a neutral win. That was in Florida.
That's right. I even remember the tournament was in. That's right.
Fort Myers, yeah.
This is our bracket for the night. Griggs, can you tell people what this is that we're looking at here?
Well, it's a blank bracket. We're going to fill it in a seed line at a time, sort of Selection Sunday style, although we're going in order of seed line, not necessarily by regional matchup. What that kind of allows us to do is give fair and equal coverage to each team as we go through it. Well, as far as how we built the seed lists, from what I understand, I sent you my seed list, and that's what we're about to reveal here, because I am the best at deciding who should be in the field.
What happened here in truth is everybody on the show tonight, as well as I think we got one other name who didn't make it in tonight. Not that certainly we've got a lot, like I've got a big cast of characters here. Everybody sent me their top 55 teams in the nation, regardless of conference. I then cross-country scored those like you would in a top 25 poll or like, and was able to come up with a consensus list of the top, probably about 85 teams actually got votes at the end of the day. Then from that list, went ahead and bracketed it up, and we are going to reveal this bracket Selection Sunday style. Kind of what we're going to do is reveal the top 16 teams, one team at a time, then go a little bit quicker after we get through the top 16 teams, one line at a time after that. But if that makes sense, I think we're just going to jump right on into this and start revealing some teams. And let's start with the number 1 team overall. It was not quite unanimous, but almost. It is the Purdue Boilermakers. Matt, do you agree that we got it, that the consensus got it right with Purdue up top again?
Yes, I think that's one of those. Had UConn won at Creighton, I would have had UConn number 1 overall. But I think that lost to where they're both now at 3 losses again. And then I think Purdue's top of the profile is just a little bit better. Their depth's a little better. They're a little better in the metrics. So yeah, just slight edge still to Purdue. It's not a huge edge, and I think like it's definitely not a done deal. But
Yeah. And can I make one other point real quick, Chad? We're not trying to guess the real committee. If that's what you are interested in, look at John Titel's bracket. This is just our own mock committee. If we were the committee, this is what it would look like.
Well,
We'd
most
have
of us
Purdue
did try to approximate what the real committee would do, Griggs, except for you, because I saw your votes and they were just insane, quite frankly.
Well, no, I mean,
we'll get to that in a few lines, though.
so-
But we'll get to that in a few lines. But yeah, number 2 overall, probably no surprise either, was UConn. And Joby, it was almost unanimous, pretty much unanimous here that these were the top 2 teams in the nation, despite the fact they've both suffered losses recently.
Yeah, they're miles ahead. I mean, they haven't. I think they have another loss in them to fall to who will be, number 3 in our bracket. And I'm with Matt 100%. I had UConn number 1 until Purdue. It's crazy. Yeah, and the J&G has reflected this too. I've never seen it where it's 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 between 2 teams. Stop losing, guys. but they're doing quite well. These 2 teams are the class of the field, and we'll see if Purdue can repeat you lose to a 16, then win it all the next year, and UConn trying to go for the repeat. What a pair of great teams.
Titel, number 3 overall, also probably no surprise that it is Houston. One team in the top line here that really has not been losing compared to some of these others.
Yeah, Cougars are looking great in arguably the best conference in the nation. No shame in losing 3 tier 1 road losses. Certainly not a home court hero as they're 4-0 neutral and 4-3 road. The non-conference strength of schedule ain't great, but everything else is, including the defense, which is number 1 in the nation.
Yeah, tough game coming up. After that, I think they win out until the Big 12 tournament.
That tough game at Baylor this week.
Yeah, at Baylor. That's
just for any of you people that is just listening has no idea what Griggs was talking about. So let's make sure.
I said they had a tough game coming up.
Matt, number 4 overall was almost unanimous as well. In fact, it was unanimous other than Joby. It is Arizona.
yeah, I think they definitely have the 4th best profile. And then they got a touch of margin of error at this point because the teams on the 2 line have started to collect some losses. But I think they still got to watch it a little bit just because, man, like there's landmines in the Pac-12. Like today's actually wouldn't be that bad if they lost, but anything else would be potentially knock them off the 1 line.
Yeah, and Dorman, I know you're an Arizona guy. I mean, do you think they could survive this game here tonight and still be on the 1 line?
I would like. It would be tight if Tennessee looks good over the weekend. I can see Tennessee moving, very possibly ahead of Arizona to the last 1 seed, and people flipping Arizona and Tennessee. That is obviously I use Tennessee because that's my 5th team and on my seed list. Arizona is trying to revenge one of their few Pac-12 losses tonight with Washington State in Tucson. So it's a big game for Arizona, and Washington State can take control of the Pac-12 if they win here tonight. I think it would be tight if Arizona loses and Tennessee wins over the weekend versus A&M.
And you remind me of something I didn't know at the top of the show here. These were all as of games coming in today, coming into Thursday. So the games today, Purdue already won, Florida Atlantic already won. The big Washington State Arizona game tonight, Gonzaga, Northwestern all playing tonight. We're not factored into any of these. If any of those games go final while we record this, we can obviously discuss them a little bit here. But Rocco, number 5 overall was the Tennessee team. Do you agree with that?
Well, as a committee forecaster, I can't because the committee just told us that North Carolina is number 5 and nothing has happened really since.
Okay.
So I can't agree with that. No. And the other thing I'll mention while I'm talking about Carolina is they play they have a big road game on Saturday at Virginia, Joby's team. And if they win that, they will be a little bit tighter with Arizona, I would imagine.
Okay. As a committee member that wasn't trying to guess the committee, would you agree with it?
I don't know because I only have one way I think about it.
I guess
I try to always remove my own opinion.
Okay. Okay. Well, the question, I guess, kind of a Stalika. Do we have Stalika here still? I think we may have lost Stalika.
I guess, Griggs, to answer your
Okay.
question real quick, going into the bracket preview show, I had North Carolina 7th. I would agree with Dorman. Tennessee was higher. I even thought Marquette was going to be higher. So, yeah, from that standpoint,
Yeah.
that was one of the surprises from Saturday.
Well, they're taking their cues from us. So, like, they're watching right now.
We got to keep feeding good information then.
Yeah.
I think we might have lost Stalika, but I think maybe we got Mike in his stead here. So I think we got a pretty good trade off.
That's
hey,
a good trade. All day long.
Mike and we'll try to find out what happened to Stalika and try to get him back here. But Mike, we got to number 6 overall, and it is Matt's Marquette team. Again, by our group think here, we actually like both these teams better than North Carolina that the actual committee liked. Do you agree with our group think, or do you agree with the
I
actual
agree with the
tournament
group
selection
thinking, 'cause
committee?
I had Marquette at 5 and North Carolina at 8, but it's very close among the twos. Like Tennessee, I don't have a problem with them being 5, but I definitely had Marquette rated ahead of North Carolina. I just think they have a better profile.
It is interesting though, because of the fact that hey, we are looking at this. Hey, the actual selection committee did like North Carolina. We still haven't gotten them in 2 spots below that, and in fact, Titel, we did sneak them in at number 7 at least, and they still do get.
Well,
to go
North
to Charlotte.
Carolina's profile is a little bit deceptive because 2 of their tier 1 wins are Wake Forest and Pittsburgh. So, like, technically, yeah, that's a tier 1 win, but neither Wake Forest or Pittsburgh is a tournament team. So that's where the tier 1 record's a little deceiving.
I don't know that Wake Forest or Pittsburgh won't be mentioned somewhere tonight, and quite frankly, take the opposite here, Mike. You could say the same about Villanova and St. John's on Marquette's profile, can't you?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Titel, go ahead. Your thoughts on Carolina versus Marquette or anyone else?
I think that we're correct to put these teams on the 2 line. I think that the 2 line is pretty well defined, frankly, in terms of, I don't think there's a ton of 3 seeds who I'm like, wow, like they've got to be on the 2 line. I think that these 3 and Kansas, frankly, is my 4th pick for the 2 line. All belong here because they've got tons of great wins. They also have excusable losses in terms of the loss at Texas Tech by Kansas. They were missing the color, and Carolina's loss to Clemson, they were missing Trimble, like excusable asterisk losses.
Yeah, and Titel ruined the suspense. Yes, it was Kansas that finished out that 2 line. Griggs, I think you had him around the 12 or 13 line, didn't you?
Yeah, more like the 10, but no, like I actually had them right at 8, I think.
Okay.
I had them quite a bit lower. When I say quite a bit, I mean, I think I had them around 12 or 13 before they won at Oklahoma. One of my biggest gripes with them was just such a lack of road wins against anybody in the field. Not only did they beat somebody in the field, they beat somebody that's really good at home and probably in the top half or close to it. So to me, that win in Oklahoma changes the complexion of their whole resume, and I agree with everybody else now that they should be 8th.
I'll tell you that the top 8 teams here, the top 2 seed lines, who these 8 teams were was pretty much unanimous across the board as well. It wasn't until we got to the 3 line that we start getting some divergence here. Rocco, number 9 overall, Iowa State, already our 3rd Big 12 team and only 9 teams in the tournament so far.
I think they have an argument. I was, again, I think they belong on a 3 seed. So anywhere 9 through 12, I can live with that. I think the big comparison everybody want to talk about was them or Baylor. Baylor, of course, has a lot more meat on the bone, but Iowa State has the beautiful, 50+ wins over teams like Prairie View A&M and Lindenwood that we all aspire to be. But no, Iowa State has the road wins in conference at TCU and Texas, which are nice mid bracket level wins, 7 through 9 seed level wins. Whereas a Baylor has neutral court great wins against Auburn, Florida, etc. So it's kind of like pick your poison. I think they both belong as 3s actually.
Yeah. And let's see here. I think we still lost Stalika. I don't know. Hopefully we can get him back here. But Joby,
Baylor lost this week as well, I should add.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
Yeah.
Baylor Baylor off of that loss at BYU, of course. Joby, Baylor did not even get number 10 overall. That went to the Crimson Tide.
Well, they're leading the SEC right now. People think, oh, Tennessee, Tennessee, Tennessee. Actually, it's Alabama that's leading the SEC. Alabama is really piling up and looking strong in how they do it. The rest of the season is going to play out very much. You know, if they win the SEC with what they have left, with at Kentucky, at Florida, and Tennessee at home, then, you know, hey, I don't think there's going to be much argument about a 3, even possibly a 2. I think that way they're going right now, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed with how the Tide's playing. I mean, last night they look, they look just tremendous. As far as I'm concerned, against Texas A&M. I mean, it didn't just beat a tournament team, just completely dominated them. And this Alabama team's starting to look like they did last year. Plain and simple. Sears is great, and Sears could win SEC Player of the Year very easily, as he is the leading scorer, and he's kind of Mr. Do-It-All, running the point.
Dorman, number 11, that's where we get Baylor in. They do get the 3 line. They may have dropped under Alabama for that loss to BYU, but did not drop any further than that.
And they really shouldn't. They have a win against Auburn, a win against Iowa State, a couple others teams that are gonna pop up here real soon. I think this is exactly where Baylor should be, and I think we have it right.
And at number 12 overall, Matt, it is the Duke Blue Devils. They do get that last 3 seed. I think it's the same exact thing that the actual selection committee did over the weekend.
And I think that's exactly about where I have them on the rankings. On there now, I think there's one team we haven't mentioned. I think that had a huge win the other day. Creighton, I think, is very close to this 3 line in that. But I can see I might have had both Duke and Creighton there and John Baylor who were 4, but I'm guessing I might have been a minority on that one.
Yeah, let me ask a quick question, Rocco. Creighton was not in the actual selection committee's top 16. Does beating UConn at home enough to push them all the way up to towing the 3 line, or maybe just onto the 4?
Yeah, it was a home win. To David's credit, there, I think it certainly pushes them into the top 16, especially when you look at Wisconsin falling just after that announcement. There's a nice warm spot for Creighton on the 4 seed line, but I just, it's not like Creighton won in stores or they even won a big East road game. They had a great environment. They took care of business at home. They got to play UConn off of a high when UConn just blew out Marquette. It was a great situational spot for the Jays, and they capitalized, but they still have 7 losses. They're still, 9-7 against the top 2 quads. It's not as dominant as some of these other options on the 3 line.
I got that 12-7 versus the top 2 quads right now, actually.
One component that only I'd imagine there is a top 13 and a major drop in the raw numbers when you were calculating, because that's how I felt. I felt like there was, including Creighton, and then just a chasm, because not just did Wisconsin make an opening, but Illinois made an opening, San Diego State made an opening. I mean, it's like everybody who's on the 4 line decided to lose this week. Auburn. So,
Yeah. I think Creighton's thing is they've got a couple of those very borderline tier 2, tier 3 wins here. But going to be bouncing back and forth.
That's crazy.
Loyola and Oklahoma State can go from 9-7 to 12-7 overnight, pretty much.
Yeah, I must have not updated that since last Friday. Okay, good call out. Because they won at Butler as well over the weekend, so that gave them another really good win. Yep.
All right. Titel, starting off our 4 line, is that Creighton team? This is where they now belong.
Yeah.
Tremendous wins over UConn the other day, in Alabama, and non-conference play early on. There seemed to be, I want to say, peaking at the right time, because that's how you beat a team like UConn. But as Stalika will not be telling us, they've had a rough go of it in Big East play, losing both at home and on the road. So while I think they are, like Matt said, deserving of a 3, I think I'm happy to put them on the float 4, but could easily bump up to a 3 with a win or 2 more.
Yeah. Mike, Auburn comes in at number 14 overall. I think this is the last team that was unanimous by pretty much everybody needs to be in the top 16.
Right, and as you were on referring to, it just seemed like the 4 seeds were like saying, "Oh, I don't want the 4 seeds." Like, no, you can have it. You know, it's like, you know, Illinois lost and something, it's like who wants to be a 4 seed? So I think just by default, you know, Auburn hangs on to their 4 seed.
I think you nailed it exactly, because I remember going through these. I was like, oh, okay, I want
It's
to
like
move
a hot
this team
potato. It's
down.
like, no, I don't want to be a 4 seed. No, you can have it. No, I don't want it.
When everybody moves down to seed line, everybody stays where they were. That's exactly what seemed to happen this week. Griggs, number 15.
With Auburn's profile is very clean. There's no losses outside of quad one, and they have a home win over Alabama, a road win at Ole Miss. I mean, wins over Texas A&M, South Carolina. So I just, by comparison's sake, they're a legitimate 4 seed.
Griggs, I just sort of real quick here. I'll go back to it. San Diego State gets in there on the 4 line, despite a loss.
Yeah, and you look at their losses individually. There's nothing bad there, but like I think the accumulation of them all together is starting to sort of be an anchor a little bit. They were a protected seed when the committee released it, and like they haven't really done anything to sink themselves. They just don't feel like one, except to I think the point Mike made and that Joby started to make, when you compare them to everybody else we haven't selected yet, I just like them a little bit better. But they don't feel like one.
You got to pick somebody.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Joby at number 16 overall is a team that you had fairly low on your 5 line, actually, but the Illini do get in there.
I hated the loss. I'm not going to lie. Hated the loss. There is no Terrence Shannon excuse, that we were anticipating. They have some warts. Hey, if they're on our 4 line, I'm not going to have major objections, because they're just part of a big group that's been, in the Mike, hey, you have it. They're just lower on the hot potato scale that Mike outlined than others are. They don't quite have the positive meat on the bone.
They don't.
I think others. You could say, oh, they won at Ohio State and at Maryland. Oh, great, you beat a team in the NIT, and a team will be lucky to be invited to the defunct CBI. I mean, okay. There could be more. Are they a tournament team? Yes. I'm not here to bash the Illini, and the fact they're 16 isn't a shocker, because we'll get to teams and you'll have plenty of warts on them as well. But there is that gap that I was talking about, Creighton and everybody else. You've heard it in the discussions of this 4 line.
That is our Sweet 16 here. And believe it or not, it was not that many people that diverged from these 16 teams, which is kind of impressive that this time of year. I think a lot of our divergences are going to start coming on the next several lines here. In fact, what I'm going to do right now is start revealing 1 seed line at a time. Dorman, let me go to you here as I reveal the 5 lines and potential second round opponents for those 4 seeds. We've got Kentucky, Clemson, Texas Tech, and Wisconsin on the 5 line.
I like those.
Exactly what I had, minus I didn't have Kentucky. I had Dayton 1 slot ahead of Kentucky. I knocked down Kentucky over the weekend after the other night in LSU, where they lost at the buzzer, but then I had to knock down Dayton too, because they also decided to lose. And like we're all saying, when everyone loses, you got to pick somebody. I like what Dayton has done with their resume based on their conference. It's just a different situation when you got to compare your resume to one like Kentucky in the SEC. But if you want to look at the tier 1 wins, they have just as many. I know people are going to say Auburn's Auburn's more impressive than anything Dayton's done, but the overall body of work, and they don't have a tier 3 or tier 4 loss. I went with Dayton slightly ahead of Kentucky.
Yeah. Griggs, I'll go tell you here, Kentucky was the very last team on our 5 line. Dayton was the very top team on our 6 line. Dayton might have been over them, except Griggs, you voted Dayton on the 9 line. And I want to give you a second to explain that before we go any further.
Okay. Who else is on the 6 line? Let's go ahead and pull
well,
it.
okay. I'll go ahead and pull up the rest of the 6 line here. Again, that's our
Okay.
5 line: Kentucky, Clemson, Texas Tech, Wisconsin. I'll pull up the 6 line as well.
I'm going to
With
explain
St.
it.
Mary's, South Carolina, Dayton, and BYU. And you thought Dayton was below all these teams and 8 or 9 more below them.
Okay,
ahead.
pull Dayton up and pick one of them. I just don't think it's even close. We'll start with St. Mary's. You know, the win at Gonzaga, the win at Colorado State, 2 teams that are either on the bubble, in Colorado State certainly inside of it, both of them away from home. Dayton's, it isn't just their paper. I don't like Dayton's paper as much as anybody else on this line. SMU's not getting into the field. The neutral floor went over Cincinnati, probably an NIT team. The Johnnies certainly aren't. The win at Joe's is good. I don't want to say that it's not worth valuing at all, but not compared to Gonzaga and Colorado State and even San Francisco. And I would even almost say UNLV. That's one of the reasons I just don't think their paper stacks up. And then the other thing is when you watch this team play, and they just don't look that good. And by that good, I mean in comparison to the teams on the 6 and probably the 7 line. Who would you? Do you think they would beat St. Mary's? Do you think they would beat South Carolina? Do you think they would beat any of these teams when they're sweating out non-NIT teams?
Rocco, do you want to take the counterpoint here on why Dayton is a 5 or a 6 seed and not a 9 seed?
Well, I
I'm
think
at 33, by the way. I think that's where I had it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general they played in a very strong event down in Charleston. They held their own against everybody. You know, in that particular event, they of course lost to Houston. Played tough for a half, and you know, they beat up Cincinnati pretty bad when they played each other, who's a bubble team. They played Northwestern.
You think Cincinnati's
until last night? Until last night. And they're still a bubble team because
they're a bubble team. Yeah, you know, I mean, they're definitely a bubble.
Yeah, well, yeah. If it would have been easy to put them in if they won last night.
Perhaps they're a bubble team, but they're outside the bubble. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but whereas Gonzaga is right on it, Colorado State's solidly in it.
Sure,
and I actually like the Dons more than UC right now. I just
That's
like
fine,
if we're comparing them to St. Mary's, it's to me it's not even close on paper. Sorry, I interrupted your explanation. You didn't interrupt me.
I'm just saying a team like Dayton only gets so many chances against the big dogs. They went to Northwestern. That game came to the wire. They lose by 5. So obviously, you know, they've got these limited sample size. The LSU win's getting better now. The LSU's playing better. Again, you know, St. John's is not a tournament team, but they beat them. So yeah, I mean, based on all the meat they put on the bone, they didn't have any games outside of the top 300, which it helps a little, I guess. They still have a 15th best resume, but their performance metrics are suggesting they're more of a 8 seed. So I think you kind of got to cut it down the middle, and they're right where they should be, about a 6 seed right now.
Let's talk about we don't want to do an entire show on Dayton. The Dayton fans would love that, I think.
That's the other reason. That is the reason they belong on the 9 line. That song.
Titel, what are your thoughts about these other? Let's look at the 5 and the 6 line cut together. Everybody else other than Dayton. You know, do we think we got these other 7 teams right?
We do. I just wanted to briefly discuss Clemson because this is a team that has just been snake bitten. 8 losses this year, 3 by 1 point, a 4th by 2 points, a 5th in double overtime. Like they're so close to being like a 2 seed, they just can't get over the hump. And you immediately think, oh, it's because like they choked at the free throw line down the stretch. They're top 10, 11 in the nation in free throw shooting, 78%. Like they're just snake bitten. They can't win a close game.
And Matt, I'll give you a couple seconds here. I think you were fighting for St. Mary's this high last week. I think we've finally gotten them there.
Yeah, they keep winning. The teams around them keep losing. And like I said, the profile, I think, the Gonzaga win. Gonzaga's right on the border of the field, if not probably just in. And then, Colorado State, I think we're going to see in the next couple of lines. So, there you go. There's 2 nice road wins. And overall, they just keep winning. They've got, I think, a pretty solid resume. And this is right where they belong in the 6 line.
Yep. Let's
so far, this committee has shown no love for the Mountain West other than San Diego State.
Well, Joby, I'll go to you for the next slide here because I think you probably single-handedly pulled all the Mountain West teams down, correct? But we do get 2 of them in here on the 7 line, both Colorado State and Utah State, along with TCU and Oklahoma.
Well, I actually did. I have Utah State as a 6. I'm dead serious on that. It would have been close.
I will double check on that for you.
Because that I am a big believer. One of the metrics I like is, are you leading a conference that, yes, is a top 7 conference in this particular?
You had Utah State as a 6 and Colorado State as a 7, by the way.
Yeah,
but,
which
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think that there's not a lot of argument on that. Oklahoma, TCU, solid Big 12 teams. I like how this 7 line has worked out. Colorado State, is a victim. Is a victim of what I see as a Mountain West team that has overinflated metrics. And I'm not going to go on the rant as I often do, but it's ridiculous that 5 of them are in the top 30 when the entire conference has, and I'll give you St. Mary's now, has 3, when it has beaten 3 teams as an entire conference that's in our field tonight. Maybe with Gonzaga floating back and forth for San Diego State. That's kind of ridiculous, to be very honest, that the metrics have gone up. I congratulate them for beating teams, by 50 when they can and all that. But whatever.
We need more teams
7,
to play
I
Mountain
think,
West.
truly believe, taking
Yes.
metrics out, I think this 7 line makes a lot of sense. Both paper and who these teams have beaten and how they've looked on the floor.
Let's go ahead and pull up the 8 line as well. If really last to the top half of the bracket, where we've got Washington State, Florida Atlantic, who did win tonight, Florida and Texas. Couple teams here I want to discuss. Dorman, beginning with Washington State, this was a team that I was pushing up to the 8 line about 3 weeks ago. I think the rest of you have finally caught up with me, though.
Yeah, I'm on board now. They got some impressive wins. Most notably the Arizona win on their home court, but that's a big one. That'll hold a lot of weight versus Boise State. That was on a neutral, but still looking strong. They're atop of that Mountain West Conference we just discussed. They have a huge game tonight in Tucson. If they were to be able to beat Arizona twice this season, then they would have a spot in first place in the Pac-12. I could even see them moving up to the 7 line.
Wow. Rocco, I pulled up Florida there on the right. And this is a team that I would have had a little bit higher than this, just because I know they've got 8 losses, but they don't have a single bad loss on that profile. And they've done a few good things.
Yeah. And I think the committee, you could take about 4 different clues away from the San Diego State inclusion on Saturday morning here West Coast time when that show is aired. And one of the 4, in my opinion, was, if there's something to like about San Diego State versus the other options, is they don't have a bad loss outside of Q1. And Florida's got that for them too. There's only 5 or 6 teams in the country that can still say that. And I thought, Florida definitely could have won at Alabama the other night. Obviously let it slip away in OT. But I don't know if that punishes them. I would probably still keep them as my last 6, figured out, late into the night tonight when I do my exercise. But I think they still probably belong as a 6 seed.
Yeah, you had Florida rated as high as almost anybody. I was up there with you. I think that as a committee, we ended up with them too low, in my opinion.
I had them as a 6 too. I'm actually surprised by it.
Somebody had to
And
pull
they'll
them
still
down a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. They're still going to play at South Carolina, and they're going to get a rematch with Alabama. So there's still some good chapters left in this Gator story coming up.
We're going to jump over to the 9 line now, and as we do, we're going to see potential first-round matchups start to show up. First of all, and welcome John Slika back. John, good to see you back on the show. And let me go to you as we pull up the 9 line.
I'm still here, John. He left to avoid me, but I'm still here.
Are you here, Slika? Okay, there he is.
Am I being heard?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, evidently Windows decided to update at 9:30 in the evening as opposed to 3 in the morning. That's what kind of day it's been here.
Well, Slika, you see 8 lines worth of teams. I'm pulling up the 9th line for you. You have the first shot at commenting on our matchups. Washington State gets Michigan State, Florida Atlantic gets Virginia, Florida gets Northwestern, and Texas gets New Mexico. Your thoughts on these 4 teams that just came in?
Are we sure we saw what Michigan State did in their last game? Because I would have serious reservations about them being in the field at this point, much less being this high up at the 9 line.
I'm actually glad you got back for this. You had Michigan State out, I think out as your last team in entirely. And they lost the home game to Iowa. But Titel, do we ding them that far for that one loss?
Sounds like Stalika might. I don't think so. I think that it's a very respectable loss, and the way Minnesota's playing tonight, which is not being factored, it's looking like a good loss at Minnesota a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and Matt, I know you're a fan of these predictive metrics, and they still love the Spartans.
Yes, and I think they got enough on their profile. This is exactly, I had them right on the 9 line to where I had them on the 8 line a week ago. They lose at home to Iowa. That's about a 1 seed line loss towards. It's a Q2 home loss, not great, not terrible. And that's, I think, 9 exactly about where they belong, where their body of work of wins isn't spectacular, but still on their own would get you in the field probably if their metrics were like 15, 20 spots lower. But their metrics like that pushes them up a couple of seeds over the teams they're competing with at the 10 and 11 lines because I said their metrics are so much stronger.
Mike, any thoughts on the other teams on this line? Virginia, Northwestern, New Mexico. You think we nailed them?
One more thing I was going to say about the Michigan State.
Okay, go ahead.
Iowa made my top 55, so it's not a horrible loss. I'm not saying it's a good loss, but it's it's like Matt alluded to, it's a quadrant 2 loss, so it's not horrible. And I think Michigan State has done enough to merit a 9 seed. As to the other teams, I don't have a problem. I mean, now at this point, there's not that much separation. New Mexico definitely they benefited greatly from the close win over Colorado State last night, so they're definitely a solid 9. Northwestern, Virginia, I had them as 10s, but I don't have too much. I don't have too much of a problem with them being 9s.
I want to pull up one last team here, Griggs. Both you and I would have had Virginia almost in the first 4 after the way they've lost their last 3 games. Sorry, Joby, but I'll let you go ahead and comment about this team that really should have lost 3 straight, although they won that game somehow in the middle of that.
Talking about the eye test, just in general, they're the kind of team that's made your eyes bleed for the last week or so. There is some good stuff on here. You look at this resume. One of the things that is not on the team sheet that is helping out Virginia, that it is not there, is free throw percentage shooting in the month of March or in the month of February. If that were a category, this team would not be in the NIT right now.
Remember, the Wake win should have been 10 points. Yeah. I'm a 90% free throw shooter, even missing one. Something weird's going on. So yeah.
They won it, but the way how bad they looked at that Vodtech game was
that the 1 for 11 free throw shooting?
No, that was the game before.
I called on Virginia Tech for weeks. I've been calling that as the loss that is definitely going to happen. It's just a house of horrors.
I didn't think it would be a 34 point. I mean,
I didn't think it would be that bad. But when you don't score for 9 minutes, that kind of is what happens.
Well, that's the thing. Had the game continued for another 60 minutes of play and Virginia Tech's none of their points been allowed, I still don't think Virginia would have tied it.
All right, let's go to the 10 line here. Rocco, let me bring you back in as I show the 10 seeds, either the potential matches for the 7 seeds. TCU gets Boise State, Colorado State gets Seton Hall, Oklahoma gets Mississippi State, and Utah gets Nebraska. Your thoughts on those 4 teams?
I would have Boise and Seton Hall closer to the bubble, but I can agree on Mississippi State and Nebraska as 10s, I think.
Yeah. Nebraska, Titel, as Griggs would like, they doubled their road win total last night at Indiana.
Yes, by a lot, if I recall. And Coach Hoiberg is doing one of his best coaching jobs of his career, in my humble opinion. They certainly are not great on the road, as you see all the road losses in the middle there, but they're all in top 2 tiers. Still got 4 winnable games coming up. Ohio State is looking much more winnable after tonight. I know that beating Rutgers is not always easy, as Chad is correct to point out, but I think they can take care of business. And as long as we're going through the rest of Big Ten, Mike, I think they're going to take care of business in Ann Arbor as well.
Michigan's decimated. Now they're down to 6 scholarship players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got Mississippi State, Boise State, Seton Hall in here as well. Let's start
I'm with Rocco about Seton Hall. I think Seton Hall belongs closer to the cut line than the 10. I mean, I know they've done some good things, but it's very marginal.
What? Like they've done some really good things.
Yeah.
I mean,
They've
to where
done
I
some
think that
bad
at
things.
least warrants the 10 line. Good.
They've done more than most teams around this area.
Yeah.
Dorman, let me stick with you as I pull up the 11 line here. Three of the 11 teams. The fourth one will not quite come up yet. The three teams that will come up are Nevada, who's going to get St. Mary's, Providence, who gets South Carolina, and Grand Canyon, who landed above our
game.
first four. Real quick note, Grand Canyon could be on the verge of losing as we record this, but again, before that game, and yeah, you're right. I think that's some pretty interesting games there as well. Go ahead, Dorman.
Yeah, some great games. I'd love to see St. Mary's play Nevada. I had Nevada a little higher than this. I really did. I think like Nevada is 11. We're right on the cut line here. We're about to, show the teams that are right in or right out. I just think they have a stronger resume than a Mississippi State, than Virginia, Joby. I'm sorry. I think them and Seton Hall just have done some really good things.
Yeah, and this Providence team here, Matt, was a team that came very close to not even making this field at all. But I think this 3-game winning streak has completely changed my mind on them. What do you think?
It definitely solidified their place. I think I would be surprised if they were not in the field if the committee had announced it today. They're this is about where I have it. I think just right on the borderline of dated or out of dated in the play-in games. But this is a solid spot for them. I think they've firmed up their resume. That win at Xavier really helps them. And then, where they said 5 Q1 wins, 2 of them away from home. I think this is definitely a tournament level resume.
Well, let's get to the first four here, Stalika. Dayton's opponent is the first of our first 4 games on the 11th night, being played in Pittsburgh. There it is the winner of a Texas A&M Gonzaga game.
How about
Well,
before you get to Stalika, I like the idea that the play-in game is in Dayton to play Dayton. I love that.
I should also add right here, we have one team going in the right direction. We also have one team going in the wrong direction. If you want to talk about the team going in the right direction, Gonzaga continues to do all the right things after getting the win at Kentucky. But if we're talking about the team doing the wrong things, getting swept by Arkansas, that is a bad look this year. I don't care what planet you are on.
I'm going to make a confession right here. Tytel, I want to know what your thoughts are on it. I did not have Texas A&M in my top 55 at all. They would have been 56th or 57th for me. I think there's just way too many losses here, and 4 quad 3 losses completely turns my stomach. But you had them in, obviously. Among you and many others had them in.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point as this Stalika. Like the Arkansas sweep this year is almost a disqualification, but so much good Tier 1A stuff there, and they're not just doing it at home. They're winning on the road, a neutral site. I understand they're losing a lot of games, and it cannot be excused or overlooked. I wouldn't give up on them just yet, Chad. I don't think they're going to win at Tennessee. I think they might win the 4 after that and finish, what would that be, 19-12 going into the SEC tourney. That's, I think, not solidly in, but I think that's bubblicious.
Yeah,
I would not look at Ole Miss as a gimme.
Rocco, that 10-11 versus the top 3 tiers also not a good number. Do we have Rocco?
I mean, I agree with that. I think that's a kind of a de facto red flag right off the bat. I also think their best road win. They have 3 pretty good road wins, but they're all NIT teams: LSU, Ohio State, and SMU. So they owned Tennessee a couple weeks ago at home. If they can go in there and get that win, I think that flips the script quite a bit. But I think, it's just a classic case of the bad outweighing the good at this point.
Okay, and I think you have had them out right now as well. Am I correct?
I have them out. Yes.
Yep. All right. Let's go to the 12 line. The last 2 teams in our first 4, I believe that they are going. Actually, I'm not certain where they're going to show up. Let's see where they show up. Kentucky's opponent here is the winner of a game between Butler and Utah. And
Pete travels to Utah, traveling from Utah to Dayton to Spokane.
Spokane.
All right, yeah.
Yes, a little bit of traveling there. Dorman, I don't know that I agree that Butler is in right now because another team is going the wrong direction. But your thoughts on both these teams? Maybe they're both heading in the wrong direction.
I had Butler exactly in this spot. They were my last team in, and it was real tight. I'll go to Utah. I don't see Utah having the resume to get in this tournament right now. They weren't on my. They didn't make my bracket. You have a win against BYU. I really like. At St. Mary's is looking better by the day. Wake Forest is bubble, and we haven't seen their name pop yet. The Washington State win is looking better by the day. I think you're going to need to win a game or two that moves the needle. And in the Pac-12, with what they have left, really only Colorado would move the needle a little. I think they need to have a big win in the Pac-12 tournament to make a statement and make this resume a lot better. I think they're very iffy to make this tournament and did not make mine.
Matt, what about the Butler Bulldogs here? Losers of 3 straight and now piling up those losses again.
Yeah, that's what I think. I would have actually had a different Big East team here.
Let me go ahead, Matt. You had in your bracket above both Villanova, above both Seton Hall and Butler, Villanova. I'm going to pull them up here on the right. I'll let you pitch your case for Villanova why they should have been in this field.
Yeah, I think their biggest issue has always been overall record. Well, that's only 15-11 now, which is, I think, within your confines of not being disqualifying. Your top 3 tiers, 11-11, not great, but I've looked at all these teams are 500 or below in the top 3 tiers, so that's also the not disqualifier. And those wins at Creighton, North Carolina on a neutral, Texas Tech on a neutral. That's 3 teams we put in our top 20 in the field, all of those away from home, and still an overall 9-8 against the top 2 tiers. I think this is a better profile than you might think.
Chad, I like both of these teams a lot higher than what we had. Yes, I know the collection of losses, but Matt's point on overall record is very important for both of these teams. I think they're both just at 15-11 and 16-11. I think they're both just above where they need to be. They're on the razor's edge. But once you get beyond that, once you get to that 5 games above 500, then you start going, wow, especially on Butler. No bad losses in that collection, for the most part. I mean, Seton Hall's is our field. And, Creighton, Marquette, Texas Tech, Boise's in it, and Villanova. Yeah. And then likewise, what Matt said, the top of Villanova's profile. Yeah, they have problems with the other Philadelphia schools. You wipe that out and you can't, I don't know. But I think both these teams, the tops of their resumes, and in Butler's case, not a bad bottom, really means to me that I think the Big East could really rack up. In my opinion, the Big East deserves a lot more bids than maybe they'll receive. The Big East is the underrated conference of the year in my book.
I'll go real quickly before I go to the top teams out. The remaining 12 seeds were Indiana State, Appalachian State, and McNeese. Indiana State, notably, would have been our second or third team out had they needed an at-large bid, but they're going in as the auto bid winner there. App State will get Texas Tech, McNeese will get Wisconsin, but I'm going to show our top 4 teams out. Titel, they ended up being Ole Miss, Villanova coming in number 2, Wake Forest, and Colorado. Holding your nose, aren't you?
Yeah, but they all are in major conferences, which means they all have major opportunities for tier 1 wins in the weeks ahead. I don't have any huge veto. This all looks pretty good, so let's keep it going.
Let's keep it going. All right. Rocco, any thoughts on the top four out and who we may have made a mistake and maybe one of these teams should have been in?
No, I don't think I would put any of them in. In fact, without any,
and I want to take 3 or 4 that we have in out as well. I understand that. We got to go to 68.
I mean, the
64.
teams that are even. Yeah, I would actually take the opposite approach. I think the teams that are actually going to Dayton in this example would be very lucky because it would mean no bid steals. And the way this season's playing out, it certainly looks like there's going to be at least 2. But we don't know. We don't know. You could get that Magic Dayton run in the A10 and the Magic FAU run in the American. But unless that happens, a couple of those spots are going away.
Yeah.
And the bracket matrix already gives South Florida a bid steal.
I'll tell you,
I agree. You go with Florida Atlantic, but You can make that.
Chad, I
Here's
got
our
a question.
Okay, well, let me just quickly go through the top 10 other teams that got
Okay.
votes. These are the other teams that got votes by anybody to be in the top 55. Maybe not in, but close. Drake, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, James Madison, South Florida, who we just mentioned, Iowa, Vatex, St. John's, Oregon, and NC State. But go ahead, Griggs. I want to go to you first, and then I want to discuss the South Florida team for a few minutes.
Okay, I was just wondering where teams like McNeese,
Yes.
McNeese and App State were on the
Okay.
seed list compared to, because I actually had them above some of the teams that we have in the first four for the reasons that we just discussed.
I will tell. I can answer that question for you. Ole Miss, between Ole Miss and Villanova, would have been Indiana State on the rankings here.
Yeah.
Below Colorado, and then came Drake in that order. The next two teams in order would have been McNeese and then App State.
Ooh,
So they
okay.
would have been
Interesting.
about 6 or 7 out of the field, but still within striking distance of an at-large bid.
I actually liked McNeese and App State more than Indiana State today, but that's interesting. Thank you for answering it. Yeah.
Let's discuss the South Florida team for a moment, though. Matt, this team, I get they've got the 2 horrible losses, but other than St. Mary's, this may be the second hottest. This probably is the second hottest team in the nation right now.
It's one of those. Plus, if the season started in December, this would be a very different story for South Florida. But fortunately, that season starting in November, and then along with those 2 Q4 losses, all the Q4 games they play. 'Cause, yeah, I think I heard them in this conversation is that non-conference SOS of 326, which or 325. You can make up for that in the Big 12. In the American, it's a different story. Like that's that's what I'm sure when Amir Abdur-Rahim took this job. He did not think South Florida was going to be an at-large team this year. So I can understand you're not scheduling for that. But once we get to this discussion, that's also going to be a huge red flag that not conference strength the schedule and the 2 Q4
That's
loss.
actually okay. I have to call a little bit of BS right there.
Okay, go ahead, because I want your
jump
opinion
in?
on them, Rocco. Go ahead.
Well, okay. So I knew that Abdur-Rahim was bringing Youngblood and Stroud with him from Kennesaw. And Kennesaw was awesome last year. And I was really passionate about trying to get all these different events to call South Florida, get them into these things, play these big games. And, Amir, all due respect, and got to cover their game Sunday. It was awesome. He elected to avoid a lot of those games, could have played them. And for good reason, like they wanted to get these new pieces together, get his bearings there. Obviously, it took them 2 months to really gel, so probably smart on his part. They also were one of the few teams, especially at this level, to not play an MTE. So that's why they only had 9 non-conference games. So anyway, I just want to call a little BS because at this stage of maturity, a team like that could have played a lot of big games.
Yeah,
Well,
but
they had a whole.
I think he probably chose not to. That's one though.
Exactly. Yeah, it was his
He
choice.
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And
they
it worked
have-
out. I mean, it worked out. They just didn't get the resume.
From December 1st on, they're 20-1.
Exactly.
It's just
But Rocco, this team is so good. I think they could have taken on one of those games and won it, and really bolstered this resume, and really
I
had
know.
something.
well, not
to
in
show the
November. They
committee.
had a horrible November.
I
Yeah,
understand.
when they lost
It
to
takes
Maine,
a little.
and they clearly weren't ready. But
Yeah.
it's funny too because almost all these American wins are by single digits. It's pretty amazing. They're just really good at close game scenarios.
but
Good coaching.
Joby, let me get
Yeah.
one more thought on the South Florida. Isn't there extra credit for being the outright regular season champion that needs
Yeah.
to possibly get factored in here
Yeah.
by the committee? And
Committee does
And-
take
and
that into account.
right. What if they lose? What if they don't lose again until the championship game against Florida Atlantic? Isn't there still an argument for them?
No, because they just haven't piled up the scalps. And that out of conference is a key component. The American, besides Florida Atlantic, doesn't allow you scalps. They don't. Now, here's the point is before Florida Atlantic, before this recent run, where, over the last couple of weeks where they've beaten a North Texas on the road, et cetera. Until then, South Florida was in the J&G in the hundreds, the low hundreds, just recently. And one of the key factors is the fact they're the sole leader of the American. They have the Florida Atlantic win. They've gone up to 71 in the J&G. That's an impressive rise in February. I don't see teams go up 30 places in February very often, and they have. However, 71 is still 20 not 5, not 10, 20 spots out of an at-large bid. They could maybe climb into the 60s. They lose even to Florida Atlantic in the final. Ain't happening. This team is not going to be an at-large team.
One more question about South Florida.
Yeah, we got to move on here, Greg.
Okay, this is to Rocco and Titel real quick, who guessed the committee. The regional rankings that the coaches select, like this is a team that is rising in the polls. You would assume that the coaches would rank them high in those committee, that the coaching advisors submit to the committee. How much weight would the committee give to that? And if it's way higher in that than it is on the profile, will they look at them more closely?
I mean, I don't think they're going to look at them any more closely than otherwise. I think, to Michael's point in the very beginning of this, I think there's an extra notation that they won their conference, and that's about the only difference between them and SMU.
Yeah.
Let's move on here. I want to reveal the rest of the field. First, if you want more detail about the teams from the 13 line down, middle of the 12 line down, check out our Under the Radar podcast. Also, check out those team sheets up top there. But the 13 line, San Diego State gets Princeton. Auburn versus Samford in a nice in-state battle there. And how about Illinois versus Akron? John Gross against Illinois. That two fun games here in the 4-13 line.
Eaters.
And the Eaters, UC versus Creighton. Going to the 14 line.
You just lost the 4 line.
Let's try this again.
Teams, but
I think you're just trying to pick Princeton and Akron to advance.
I'll tell you what, we're going to reveal the whole field here. We had a little bit of technical problem there, but the 14 line was High Point, Louisiana Tech, Vermont, and College of Charleston. The 15 line, Colgate gets Marquette, Oakland gets North Carolina, Quinnipiac gets Tennessee, Eastern Washington, who just came off a loss as we recorded this, gets Kansas, and the 16 line. Avoiding Dayton is Southern and Morehead State. Going to Dayton is Merrimack, Norfolk State, Eastern Kentucky, and North Dakota. On that note, we've got an entire bracket. We've got our top, looks like 14 teams out or so. I want to run through each of you for any other final thoughts on anything we did tonight, anything else you want to discuss, whatever you want to throw out there. And Mr. Salika, since you missed part of the show, I'll let you go first.
I think one of the omissions I probably realized when I was sending towards the bottom of my 55 list, the Richmond Spiders are a team that can't quite seem to crack the top 55, but even though they're not going to be at large, this is a team that's very much capable of being a bid thief, especially with Dayton starting to stumble a little bit and probably not as reliable a pick to win the Atlantic 10 tournament as we thought back in January. So if not Richmond, also keep an eye on teams like Loyola or George Mason to be another potential bid thief on Sunday, along with South Florida, who, as I might add, is going to be the last game right before we actually go live with the selection committee at 6 p.m. that evening.
Mm-hmm. Even more reason to give South Florida an at-large bid. If they're playing FAU on Sunday, it makes it easier for all those bracketologists. But Rocco, let me go, Rocco. Let me go to you next on your final thoughts here. Quick note also, he mentioned teams that just barely missed it. Memphis would have been on the board. I was also considered until you realized you had a mistake at the last minute and we got to throw them off. But go ahead.
Yeah, I keep throwing Memphis out there because they still play Florida Atlantic twice starting this weekend. So, it's all about opportunities at this stage of the game. I'm also, I think the Wake Forest case is really, really interesting because right now their only 2 road wins are Boston College in quad 2 and Georgia Tech in quad 3. And obviously their metrics are phenomenal. When you watch them blow teams out, they look absolutely like an NCAA tournament team. But even like the last 2 years under Coach Forbes, they've been able to electrify you, especially in home games. And they've got Duke on Saturday, so there's a really good chance they go out. That game's been sold out now for a few days. I'm sure it's going to be electric. Good chance they beat Duke. I'm just really concerned about their road resume. All they have left on the road is Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. And then they end with a Clemson home game, which could give them another win over the field. As it stands today, they really have only beaten Florida in the neutral court game and a home win over Virginia so far against the board, against teams in the field. So Wake Forest, kind of a polarizing case, clearly not getting in without either a home Duke win or a couple more road wins. We'll see if they can win it in Blacksburg on Saturday, March 2nd. But I think Wake Forest is a team everybody's got their eyes on in these last 5 games.
Yeah, you see how close they came to making our field tonight. In fact, Matt, you're up.
This one a little bit outside of the field, but something we all enjoyed. I think anyone probably watching this one. Shout out to Andrew Weatherman, the Duke grad student in that, who I think is going to revive the Jerome. And that we thought the Jerome was going away. There's a contest where you pick all the conference tournament winners in that, and hey, some of us have even done well in it in the past. But I'm glad to see for all of us, we've all started to enjoy playing it. I think here. And it's got over 1,000+ entries the last couple of years. So I'm very glad it's being brought back and look forward to hopefully having another strong finish this year.
Matt, a former winner of the Jerome, by the way.
Yeah.
Multiple champion. Man, how many times have you won it?
I won once. And I think I was top 5 one other year.
Oh, I thought you won multiple times. Okay, never mind.
Mike, your final thoughts.
Yes, Matt, please send us a link for the revitalization. But anyway, yeah, before I didn't really give a thought about Villanova, but when I look at the remaining schedule, it's like if they win 3 out of their last 5, and that's very doable, they're 5 above, and they're all of a sudden they're definitely a more than just a legitimate a candidate to make the field. And then another team to watch out, not necessarily because they're good, but because their schedule's favorable, is Oregon. Other than the at Arizona game, they're going to be favored in 5 of their last 6 games. So sometimes it's not always the best team that makes it at the end, but sometimes the teams with the more favorable schedule that makes it.
And a couple of nice scalps they could pick up there with Colorado and Utah home games late
Exactly.
in the season. I agree with you that Oregon is not out of this by any means at this point. Titel.
2 quick thoughts on the bracket. I see Chad has Wisconsin as the 5 seed out west. I'd almost rather lose to Creighton than have to even think about playing Wisconsin. They are certainly not a good matchup for the Wildcats in the past, as Dorman is well aware. And then as far as the East region, if we recall, last year the Final Four was UConn, San Diego State, FAU, and Miami. As Joby might notice, he could face Miami in the quarterfinals of the ACC. It could be a very likely 3-11 game. And then a week later, he might have to face FAU and UConn, 3 of the Final Four from last year in a 10-day stretch.
Joby, your final thoughts.
Well, first, congratulations to the New York Rangers. If you couldn't tell behind me, the Empire State Building lit up. If you want to get the exact time of when we're doing the podcast, there you go. It lit up during the show, as a matter of fact. As I mentioned going in, I think the Big East could really play a big role because of that Butler and Villanova team, as well as Seton Hall. They have a lot of teams right on the bubble, but I love their resumes compared to others on the bubble. Chad mentioned off air that, wow, we were talking about how strong the bubble is, and then this year it just all of a sudden collapsed, and maybe we should go back to 64. I'm seeing that as well. It's like the Ole Misses of the world and a bunch of teams like that decided to, in Utah, they stopped playing. But I do think right now the Big East in particular, with even Providence, et cetera, is filling that breach right around. We're going to see a Big East team in Dayton. I am very confident of that, because I think they'll get some teams just over the line. And it's all metrics that as these teams build up, then teams that beat them all of a sudden look good. It's a perfect example. And as we can see, and I won't go to the Mountain West, I'll go to the ACC on this one. As we can see, the metrics can be gamed. You mentioned Wake Forest beating Pitt by just trouncing by 30. Do you know why? They kept their starters in and were shooting threes with 2 minutes to go, legitimately running up the score. Forbes is asked after the game and goes, yeah, the metrics. I mean, he fully admitted that the reason we're doing this is because of the metrics. And that's the second point, is I think we really need to start doing something about it, because now you're seeing the coaches actually implement strategy at the end of the games to blow out teams, as opposed to doing what, and I'll use Virginia's example, playing all the kids off the bench when they're down at Virginia Tech by 20, and then it turns into 30, and Virginia loses 10 spots in the net. I feel like there's something wrong when you're encouraging teams to blow other teams out. Yes, strength, margin of, strength, margin and efficiency certainly should play a role, but I think it's playing an outsized role beyond what a true evaluation of a team is.
I agree with you. I think that
Yeah,
I don't know how you do it, but something's got to be done with the math somewhere.
You got to tweak the system in the offseason.
Okay.
Well, if it
Dorman.
makes you feel better,
Yeah.
our walk-ons play when they're getting their ass kicked at UConn.
Dorman, go ahead.
Few things as we look at this our bracket here. Let's look at the West. Arizona, Creighton, Alabama, Kansas, BYU. That is a load of scoring, high-paced, fast tempo. That would be real exciting basketball in that LA region. Take note, watch on the 13 line, we have the from the Ivy, we have Princeton here. The Ivy is going to be a fantastic finish and a great Final Four. They only bring 4 to their conference tournament. Princeton, whether it be Princeton, Yale, or Cornell, there's going to be there's more wins for this Ivy champion to be had. And I had Princeton tonight on the 12 line. The Ivy League can do as well as the 12 line. I really believe that if the chips fall right for them.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say a quick note. The reason Princeton, even though they're not in first place of the Ivy League, is on there is a couple of you voted them on their top 55. So I gave that the preference of making them the Ivy League champ for tonight. But go ahead, Dorman, finish your thoughts.
Yep. And the last one would be a great Sweet 16 game there in the East in Boston, Connecticut versus Auburn. That would be fantastic. That would be a great game.
All right. Griggs, you want to finish the show out here?
Yeah, just sort of we sort of ran through the 13 through 16 lines real quick, or I guess 12 through 16. As a fan of the sport, you see some teams up there, Sanford in particular, and who else? Grand Canyon. Just teams that have had really big years that you would hate to see them miss out on the NCAA tournament because of what happens in a conference tournament. I think that those are teams, like you mentioned, the Ivy League as well, that are not only – I think that those teams could not only make it and be fun to watch, but could really challenge somebody in the round of 64. So for a lot of those under the radar conferences, I'm just hoping the chalk holds. The tournaments actually start very soon.
Yes, we are just a little about 10, 11 days away from the start
10,
of conference
11 days.
tournaments.
Yeah.
But on that note, on behalf of the entire Brady Bunch family here at Hoops HD, I'm Chad Sherwood. We got David Dorman, John Teitel, Joby Fortune in the center square, Matt Zukowski, Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org, also at Rocco Miller 8 on X/Twitter/ whatever you call it these days, John Salika, David Griggs, Mike Cha. I'm Chad Sherwood. And we will be back again next week. We're going to need a bigger screen if we find one more person, though. Talk to you again real soon.